Hey guys, it's Ryan with Fluid Health. Today showing you how to do a progressive abdominal tension test. So essentially we want to know that you have built-in endurance ability to support the passive stretch resistance of your abdominals so that they can control the limb position while you're in gait or during any other activity. So we know that the flexor line, they all are a team and they all support each other so they contract and stretch together. And that means when the leg goes behind you and the arm advances in front, you would see that in the stance side of your gait cycle. Again, this whole flexor line stretches. That includes your pec, your lat, your abdominals, your quads, your hip flexors. They all stretch together. And then when you advance the limb forward, you bring it together into flexion, and then you bring it forward so they all contract together. Now the problem again is that we overuse distal or superior segments and we don't use our centrals. So we have a tendency not to use our abdominals as well. So we use our proximal relationships at the shoulder or at the hip, so the local shoulder joint mechanics, like the pec will overreact, the hip flexor will overreact. But then they see these guys get short and strong, and when you go into stretching them, they disproportionately drag and open the ab wall. Now again, we know that has to do with the diaphragm and the inability to maintain abdominal tension. So what we want to do is progressively test it or stress test it, see if we can hold the additional tension for duration, and then kind of determine, or I shouldn't say kind of, explicitly determine, can you hold the weight of the limb and bring it down and ratchet it down into extension without any accessory motion hypermobility from the lumbar. Now to do that, all you have to do is lay on your back. Now normally, if you were in the studio with us, we'd put a little blood pressure cuff under your back. In our class series, you're going to see us use a mat or a band or a towel that's underneath your back with, again, a band tied off to the side so it'll spring load it and pull it out if you let it go. But what we're going to do is have you come up into a 90-90 at the hips, floating. Bring your arms back into a horizontal 90. So you're holding the shoulders back, keeping the stretch on the pecs and the lats. And again, we're going to start this by keeping our legs up at 90 degrees with the back imprinted. Now as we do that, we want to go through a full reserve volume breath cycle where you breathe in through the nose for 2, and then breathe out through the mouth for 6, fully getting all the air out of the lungs. At the bottom of the breath, you pause for 2, and you start over. Now once again, the intent here is to keep the lumbar in contact with the mat the entire time, so that on the breath in or out, we don't lose any of the pressure on the lower back. Now the idea here is that you're maintaining the abdominal tension, controlling the respiratory cycle, and not seeing any accessory motion from the lower back. Now if you can do that for 2 minutes, well then you've cleared the first stage of this endurance test. So now what we would want to do, keep the knees at 90 and drop the hips down by about 40 degrees. So we want to see you have the same ability to go through the same respiratory cycle, in for 2 through the nose, out for 6 through the mouth, pause at the bottom for 2, and then repeat that cycle for 2 minutes with no accessory motion out of your back. So again, if you had a mat there or a towel and it was tethered to a band, it was under tension, if you lost your tension of your ab wall, your back would extend and the towel would float right out. So the goal is, can you maintain the weight of the limb and then the passive stretch resistance of your abdominals against that breath cycle, again for 2 minutes with an extension increase in the limb. Now eventually you want to bring those legs down all the way to the point of tapping. So knees are at 90, but now you're at about 60 plus degrees of hip flexion. So you're just sitting there making sure that your lower back doesn't come off. So we're systematically qualifying the endurance capacity of the abdominals at various length relationships of hip extension, and making sure that your body doesn't let go of its abdominal tension while it can support the same respiratory cycle that we know is going to engage your inner and outer unit efficiently. Now eventually you want to take that to a bilateral 60 degree, 90 degree knee hip, and then eventually we want to go into single leg full extension, and then single leg full extension with incremental increases in extension on the opposite side, and then we want to do both sides. And then you're ultimately working up to bilateral initiation of weight transfer during the gait cycle with no accessory motion from the lower back. And you would want to see that cross body or cross extensor reflex in play without any accessory motion from the lumbar for about 2 minutes of time under tension. So incrementally increasing the ability of the lumbopelvic system to support, again, ambulatory patterns, or again, cross extensor or contralateral reciprocation of limb motion. So no movement from the back as you move the limbs, because we keep the canister stable and the powerhouses don't move it around. So there it is, guys. Questions on it, reach out, admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. It's a progressive series of endurance. We want to make sure you can qualify in each stage. Make sure to reach out to your movement specialist so that they can help you identify which is appropriate for you. And again, use this drill to establish your efficiency for functional ability to support lumbopelvic hip stability. Once again, admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com with any questions. Talk to you soon.